All right, out here this evening, got my Fiat doors that have been sandblasted. I sprayed epoxy on them, and now is a pretty critical part. We're going to put seam sealer back around the hem flanges, and I've got a few tricks to make it go on nice and smooth, look like a factory finish, and things that I think work better than anything else out there as far as durability. So let's look at it real quick. Here's a door that has no sealer. So you can see all the flanges are nice and clean. I did go and I've already scuffed everything. Yeah. All right, so scuffed everything using good old red Scotch-Brite scuff pad, which is equal to 320 grit sandpaper, but it fits in all the weird little curves and crooks, the nooks and the crannies. And then 320 grit, just dry sandpaper. Doesn't matter what brand it is. You just some of the better stuff seems like it lasts a lot longer. So yeah, 320 and 320. So go around here. I mean, sealed up really nice. It's going to turn out great. Had a little rivet right here that was from a previous molding. This card had been painted without moldings before, and they didn't even bother to pull the rivets out. They just welded the holes up. So I didn't notice it until I was sandblasting. It'll be fine. We'll get it all camouflaged in there. And I'm debating whether I should seam seal around the deck lid. It just seems like it cleans everything up, and you know, probably had it from the factory, but this has all been epoxied, and really it's actually sat for a couple of weeks because I've just had a ton of other things going on, and you know, it's not my primary job. What more can I say? So I've already got one of these doors that's seam sealed. I'll bring it back in here in a second and walk you around, let you look at it. We're going to be using that same SX330. It's in a previous video. I'll try to put the link up here for you. Got white seam sealer here. This happens to be SEM brand. Seems really nice. It says it's paintable immediately, but since I'm using wax and grease remover to level out my seam sealer, I really probably should let this dry, 12 hours, I would say, just to be sure that all the solvents are out of it. I could hit it with a heat gun, make them evaporate faster, but it's already 9:30. I don't want to paint out here. There's bugs flying around everywhere. It would look really bad. So I'm going to set this up and do a little. I'll just take this, and there's a little bit sticking out there. I want to use everything I can on this job, so I don't even bother to wipe that off. It just finds a spot down here in a corner. And I have already blown this off after scuffing and wiped it out real quick with a tack rag. I don't know how well it's showing up, but I'm not putting a very big bead in here. I'm going to smash this stuff into the crack in just a second, and we don't need an excessive amount. Used to use entirely too much seam sealer, so I've broken myself of the habit, and just putting down a fairly small bead. So I pull this off here, show you. This is just like right after it's applied. So then the next step is to throw a little bit of the wax and grease remover on it and smooth her out. Another thing, don't soak it down. just put enough on there to get you something to wet this up with. And it's warm enough out tonight that she's drying really fast. So if you've ever replaced caulking around windows in houses, this is very similar.
Okay, so I got it on there. Now, the trick time. See how it's all the way out to the edge here? Not really bad in the middle, and then it's all the way out to the edge right here. The back side of it, or this edge right on the bottom of the door here, is not very bad. It'll hardly even show up once we start painting. I mean, I just pull my rubber glove tight, and you do. Always wear gloves when you do this, because you'll wear this stuff off your hands for 2 weeks if you don't. So, we put it down here, and go back one more time, just to kind of show you guys that she's smooth. Now, I take my white towel. I'm going to flip this thing around until I get a good fold there. I'm going to push it onto the door and then curl it over, pinch it down tight, and I go backwards, and then I'm going to pull it forwards. So what I'm essentially doing is I am cleaning all that seam sealer right off the bottom edge of the door, making a line slightly higher up so that we end up being able to put a really nice and clean paint line in there. No issues with it. I'll do the same thing right there, kind of get rid of some of my excess wax and grease remover so it's easier to do my next application of seam sealer. This side of the door is the hinge side, so I guess technically this is the front. Right here there's some big cutouts or factory spots in the door where they make this curve, so I applied the excess seam sealer right there. But this stuff dries pretty fast, so I'm going to go ahead and come back in here. Now that's with no wax and grease remover, so I don't want to get wax and grease remover in this pinch flange here before it's sealed up with seam sealer. So you put your seam sealer on first, then you wax and grease it. That's why I cleaned that off, because this next step.
All right. Okay, so here we go. We are going to go ahead and here we go. Apply a little bit. All right. So you can definitely see, without even brushing it or using wax and grease remover on it, I got it reasonable, but I want to work on this area right here and make sure that this has no lines. extra there. Get rid of that right now. Just come in, smooth her out real quick. Alright, just got that bug. Okay, so here is the kind of final product here. Around, all the way around the bottom. Back up this side. Did you see that bug? He like landed in my seam sealer. Yeah, bugs always try to mess everything up when you're doing this work. Always. So I'm reaching inside right now, smoothing out the backs of those weep holes. That's so water can run out of the weep hole when you get it clean. If you leave the seam sealer hanging up in there, it will not ever run out, and then the whole bottom of the door will rust off. So we'll like contort back in here, wipe that out. One more right there. And okay. Now I can go in the house and go to sleep, wake up in the morning and come out here and do a little more cleaning and spray these things. All right, so this morning I'm back out doing more work with the Fiat. It kind of looks like Groundhog Day. We're sanding, spraying, sanding, spraying, seam sealing, sanding, spraying. Yeah, so it goes on and on. But I can see the close coming to it here pretty quick. We're going to get the last coatings put on these parts today on the undersides, and then I'll be able to reassemble some stuff and the car will start looking like it's a car again. So I've got pictures of the underside of a hood. Thing was pretty nasty. The hood for this car was around $600, so it was really a toss-up whether we're going to fix it or replace it. And for the most part, it's not bad. This all covers up with a hood insulator, so I'm not so concerned with the paint quality there. But then back here, you can see it's been wrecked and beat back in place and just not all that nice. But it fit the car, and the issue is the front fenders on Fiats are welded onto them, and to put a new hood on it, I would likely have to cut the fender off and put it on. And it's just outside of the budget of what the customer wanted to do on the car. So I've straightened the metal on the front side of the hood fairly well. I've straightened the metal on the fender and test fitted it 3 or 4 times to make sure it was all going to line up as good as it did before. And we're just going to paint it and go with it, and it'll look nice. So I've got my Jet NR 2000 spray gun here. Man, this thing has sprayed a ton of paint. It's been a very durable gun. If you can find one of these used, they're well worth the money to purchase. Because their new guns are close to $1,000 for the list price on them. That'd be very cost prohibitive for somebody just working in their garage at home. You get one of these with a 1.3 needle and seat set. Mine's actually got a 1.4 in it. 1.3, 1.4, somewhere in there. It'll serve you well for many years, I promise. All right, so use this gun. We're going to keep this thing like 6 to 8 inches. I don't have a gauge on my gun. You'll notice I just have the choker valve kind of closed off here to regulate some air pressure. I've already blown and tacked everything because that's pretty boring to watch on a video, but we're not really soaking this stuff on. We're just going to put a nice medium coat on there. And, you know, I epoxied directly over the sandblasted metal. I scuffed the epoxy, put the white seam sealer in it, and now this next coating of epoxy is just to help fill any bad scratches and make it where we don't have to cover this white up with the green paint. And that's all there is to that. It seems like we're putting a lot of material on here, but it's really, there's about 1.5 mils of epoxy prior to seam sealer. And that one little light coat there, that was another 1/2 to 3/4 mil. And that gets us right in the requirements PPG wants for their undercoats. And the cool thing about epoxy is we can spray base coat right over the top of this with no issue, as long as our scratches aren't too coarse. You might be able to get away with some errant, like a few little 180 scratches, but you better have it at least 320 when you're spraying the epoxy over it before you're going to put base on. I think the only exception to the rule is if we were using waterborne base coat. You cannot spray waterborne over the top of most of the epoxies that are out there. So you definitely don't want to get something that's incompatible, because the first nice car wash, you'd wash your paint job off. Okay,